Stop chasing. Start aligning. Carl Jung's life-changing realization. Carl Jung once said, "What you resist persists." In life, the harder we chase, the further our desires seem to run. But when we shift into alignment, everything begins to flow naturally. This video from Spiritual Wisdom invites you to stop chasing and start aligning with the deeper rhythm of your soul. Because true transformation comes not from force, but from harmony with who you really are. Imagine the peace of letting go, the joy of living in sync with life instead of fighting against it. What about you? Do you feel ready to release the chase and embrace alignment? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective might just inspire someone else on their journey. 1. Worry is the ego's trap. Worry is not strength. It is the ego's disguise, a defense mechanism meant to shield us from the truth of our own vulnerability. It convinces us that if we keep rehearsing every possible disaster, we will somehow gain control. But in reality, it creates illusions, false alarms, and magnified fears that imprison us in endless cycles of anxiety. Seneca once observed, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And this is exactly what worry does. It makes us suffer through visions of problems that may never even exist. Instead of moving us forward, worry keeps us stuck, like running on a treadmill, draining energy, yet leaving us in the same place, exhausted but unchanged. Carl Jung, whose spiritual wisdom continues to shape modern psychology, pointed out that worry is not a tool for solving problems, but a mask that prevents us from facing them. It is the ego's attempt to substitute real growth with endless mental noise. Jung said, "Neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering, and worry functions in the same way. It pretends to protect us, but really, it delays us from experiencing the real lessons of life. Instead of allowing us to face uncertainty, grief, or transformation directly, worry pulls us into imaginary battles that drain our spirit and disconnect us from our deeper intelligence. When we worry, we cut ourselves off from the wisdom of the body, from the quiet guidance of intuition, and from the deeper self that is already aligned with life's flow. This disconnection is why worry feels so heavy. It shrinks our awareness and blinds us to the very solutions that could liberate us. By clinging to worry, we abandon our own inner authority and hand over control to fear. In that moment, life feels smaller, more suffocating, and the world seems filled with obstacles rather than possibilities. Yet spiritual wisdom shows us another path. Instead of asking, "What if everything goes wrong?" you can choose to ask, "What if everything aligns in my favor?" This shift is not naive optimism. It is an act of intelligence, a recognition that your energy is better spent aligning with truth than fueling illusions. Worry, after all, cannot predict the future. It can only poison the present. By contrast, alignment places you in harmony with the present moment, where clarity, resilience, and strength naturally emerge. To stop worrying is not to abandon responsibility, but to embrace it with clear eyes. It means choosing presence over projection, truth over illusion, and action over stagnation. It means recognizing that your soul does not need the treadmill of fear, but the compass of alignment. Every time you release worry, you reclaim your energy, your creativity, and your ability to meet life directly. Jung's insight reveals that transformation does not come through anxious rehearsal, but through courageous engagement with reality. Worry is the ego's prison, but alignment is the soul's liberation. When you let go of the false safety of worry and allow your intelligence and intuition to guide you, you step into the deeper flow of life, where strength is no longer manufactured by fear, but discovered through trust, awareness, and presence. If you're ready to release worry and step out of the ego's trap, comment below, "I am aligned with peace." Let's affirm it together. 2. Letting go is awakening, not laziness. Letting go is not laziness, weakness, or defeat, but a higher act of trust, a deep expression of spirituality and spiritual awakening that reveals your strength rather than diminishes it. When you release the compulsion to control everything, you are not abandoning responsibility. You are stepping into alignment with the greater intelligence of life itself. It is like floating in water. When you panic and resist, you sink. But when you relax and trust, the water lifts you effortlessly. This is the paradox of letting go. The less you fight, the more supported you feel, and the more you realize that life has always been carrying you. Carl Jung understood this clearly when he said that much of our suffering is born not from life itself, but from the ego's constant struggle to control what cannot be controlled. When you look closely at moments of true brilliance in art, music, sports, or creation, you will notice they often emerge not from force, but from release. The painter who stops obsessing about every brushstroke discovers a masterpiece flowing through them. The athlete who stops tensing every muscle finds themselves moving with an almost effortless grace that defies explanation. The musician who surrenders to the music rather than forcing the notes creates a sound that touches the soul. These are not accidents. They are examples of how letting go allows a higher rhythm to work through us. Spirituality teaches that this state is available to all of us, not just the gifted few. Because the moment you stop clutching so tightly to outcomes, you create space for the intelligence of the universe to flow through you. True letting go changes why you act. Instead of striving to prove your worth, gain approval, or control how others see you, you begin to act from authenticity. You write, speak, love, and create not because you are trying to meet an expectation, but because it is your natural self-expression. That is the essence of spiritual awakening, no longer living as a performance, but living as truth. In a world dominated by comparison, validation, and appearances, this shift is revolutionary. You are no longer trapped in the exhausting cycle of proving yourself. Instead, you live from the quiet power of being yourself. And ironically, when you stop trying to impress, your presence becomes even more magnetic because people sense the freedom and peace you embody. Letting go is also a courageous presence. It is not about giving up your dreams or abandoning your responsibilities, but about refusing to cling to them with fear. You set your intentions, take meaningful action, and then trust the process without needing to micromanage every detail. Just as a gardener plants seeds and waters them without digging them up daily to check if they are growing, you too must learn to trust that unseen forces are at work on your behalf. This kind of trust is not passive. It requires great courage to release the illusion of control and let life reveal its timing. Spiritual awakening is precisely this transformation, moving from anxious grasping to graceful alignment, from forcing outcomes to allowing them to unfold. And so the question is not whether you can let go, but where in your life you are still clinging. Where are you resisting the flow? exhausting yourself with panic, or building your identity on proving something. What if you could release that weight, even just a little? What if you could allow yourself to float rather than thrash? To let go is not to do less, but to be more aligned, more authentic, more present. It is to realize, as Carl Jung once reminded us, that what you resist persists, what you accept transforms. Letting go is the gateway to transformation, not because you abandon effort, but because you align effort with trust, action with presence, and being with becoming. It is in this delicate balance that the deepest spirituality emerges, and in this awakening that you discover the freedom you were always searching for. Do you see letting go as a sign of awakening rather than laziness? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're ready to embrace this truth in your own life, comment, "I will let go," so we can walk this path together. 3. The root cause of worry is identification with images and expectations. The root of worry lies in how we tie our self-worth to the images we project and the roles we perform. From an early age, we are taught to wear masks to be the responsible child, the successful professional, the perfect partner, the strong friend. And over time, we begin to mistake these masks for our true identity. We confuse the persona, which Jung described as the mask we show society, with the essence of who we are. The danger here is that once the mask cracks, when life no longer reflects the image we carefully constructed, it feels as though our entire being is collapsing. Even a small failure or a hint of disapproval becomes catastrophic, not because of the event itself, but because it threatens the fragile foundation on which we've built our sense of worth. Worry, then, becomes the natural response of the ego trying to defend a false self, clinging desperately to control. Jung captured this truth when he said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." That sentence alone reminds us that the real fear is not in what we lose outwardly, but in facing ourselves inwardly, without the safety of masks or illusions. Worry arises whenever we project our inner emptiness onto others or onto outcomes, seeking in them a kind of validation we cannot give ourselves. We hope that success will silence the inner voice of doubt, or that another person's approval will make us feel complete. But this endless chase only multiplies our anxiety. Every "what if" becomes a prison of thought. What if they leave me? What if I fail? What if I am not enough? Yet these questions are not about reality. They are about fear, born of identification with images. In truth, worry is not random. It is a symptom, a signal that we are living for the image and not the essence, for appearance and not authenticity. And this is where spirituality and spiritual development call us back, because they ask us to peel away the layers of illusion and stand in the strength of our unmasked self. In the modern world, this problem only deepens. Social media trains us to build entire identities based on images and likes, while careers push us to measure worth in numbers and achievements. It is easy to think, if I don't have this title, who am I? Or, if this relationship ends, what remains of me? But these are false equations created by the ego. True selfhood is not dependent on roles, relationships, or external validation. Spirituality teaches us that our value does not come from the fleeting approval of others, but from the eternal essence within. Spiritual development is the slow, often uncomfortable process of detaching from the masks we cling to and remembering the wholeness that has always been present. When worry appears, it is not just something to suppress or escape from. It is an invitation to look deeper. Instead of asking how you can control the outcome, ask yourself, what mask am I trying to protect right now? What expectation am I holding that makes me fear its loss so deeply? By doing so, worry transforms from an enemy into a guide. It points you back toward your true self, urging you to stop chasing illusions and start aligning with essence. This shift is not easy, but it is liberating. You realize that your worth is not in whether someone praises you or rejects you, not in whether success arrives today or tomorrow, but in the unchanging truth of who you are beneath the mask. The lesson is clear. Worry reveals where you are over-identified with images. The more you chase validation, the more fragile your peace becomes. But the moment you align with your essence, worry begins to dissolve, because there is nothing left to defend. You no longer fear losing what was never truly you. Spiritual development, then, is not about adding more strategies, more achievements, or more approval. It is about shedding the false layers until what remains is your authentic self. The reward for this journey is profound. Freedom from anxiety, a deep sense of peace, and the quiet strength that comes from living in truth. This is the transformation Jung pointed to. The life-changing realization that when you stop chasing and start aligning, you finally discover that you are already whole all along. If this insight on how worry comes from clinging to images and expectations spoke to you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your reflections in the comments below. Let's uncover secret number 4 together. 4. Transformation from worry to freedom. Carl Jung taught us that transformation is not about denying what we feel, but about bringing it into the light of awareness. Because until we make the unconscious conscious, it continues to rule our lives. Worry, for many of us, becomes a constant companion, something we either suppress or endlessly wrestle with. But Jung revealed a path of recognition, confrontation, and release. To recognize worry is the first step, not as an enemy, but as a passing phenomenon of the mind. When you observe worry instead of reacting to it, you weaken its hold over you. You begin to see that it is not your identity, but a temporary movement of thought and fear. This shift alone is an act of intelligence and spiritual wisdom, because it teaches you that awareness itself is power. Once you recognize worry, the next stage is confrontation. And this is where most people hesitate, because beneath worry lies the true roots of suffering. Fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of being abandoned or unseen. These are the silent drivers of human behavior, hiding in the shadows of the unconscious. Jung reminded us that neurosis often arises as a defense against legitimate suffering, meaning that worry is the ego's mask to shield us from deeper pain. But when you dare to face the emotion underneath the worry, you begin to release what has been trapped there for years. You stop running and instead turn to look directly at what frightens you. This requires courage, but it is through this process that energy once locked in anxiety becomes free again. Then comes the release, and this is where transformation blooms. Imagine the caterpillar sealed inside its cocoon, pressed into stillness, unable to move, as if suffocated. Yet within that confinement, wings are forming. What appears like death is in truth the beginning of freedom. Your own worries act like that cocoon, confining at first, but ultimately becoming the very environment of your transformation. Release does not mean that fear disappears forever. Instead, it means fear no longer dominates your choices or identity. You begin to live with fear, present but powerless, and this is the mark of true freedom. Jung believed freedom was not the absence of fear, but the ability to live without being enslaved by it. And when you arrive here, you realize you are no longer a prisoner of your thoughts. This process is not abstract or unreachable. It is something you can apply in daily life. Every time worry rises, pause and simply notice it. Don't fight it and don't suppress it. Observe it with calm curiosity. Ask yourself, what is this worry trying to protect me from? What deeper fear is it pointing toward? By naming it, you strip away its hidden power. Then allow yourself to sit with the fear without judgment. And in doing so, you break the cycle of resistance that feeds anxiety. Like the caterpillar, you will find that what once suffocated you is preparing you for wings. Over time, this builds emotional intelligence, the kind of wisdom that lets you move through relationships, decisions, and challenges with clarity and resilience. Worry then becomes your teacher rather than your jailer, a doorway into inner freedom. The intelligence of spiritual wisdom is learning that control is an illusion, but alignment is liberation. When you stop clinging to outcomes and begin to align with life, you find that everything begins to flow more naturally. Energy once drained by worry becomes available for creativity, connection, and growth. You no longer live in the shadow of fear, but in the light of awareness. This is the essence of Jung's realization. Transformation is not found in chasing security, but in aligning with your inner truth. Recognition leads to confrontation. Confrontation leads to release, and release leads to freedom. A freedom that has always been within you, waiting to be lived. If you've made it this far, drop a comment saying, "I'm free from worry," below. Your words help us grow together on this journey of transformation. 5. When we stop worrying, life aligns naturally. Life begins to unfold in the most natural and harmonious way the moment we stop worrying. Because worry is not strength, but the illusion of control created by the ego, a fragile shield to cover up our fear of uncertainty. Carl Jung, with his profound insights into the human psyche, described this as the alignment of the ego and the self, a state in which the ego no longer resists or clings, but allows the deeper wisdom of the self to lead. To understand this, picture a garden. Flowers do not bloom because the gardener anxiously hovers over them, counting each bud and fearing every cloud. They flourish because the gardener tends the soil, provides water, and trusts nature's rhythm. In the same way, your life contains a hidden order that reveals itself when you stop trying to micromanage every outcome and instead trust in the deeper intelligence that governs growth and transformation. This shift is not passive resignation, but a profound act of spiritual wisdom, where spirituality becomes practical and spiritual awakening turns into a way of living with clarity and grace. When worry dominates your inner landscape, your nervous system is locked in fight or flight, as though every moment of life were a threat demanding defense. Your breath shortens, your heart races, and your mind becomes clouded with anxious thoughts that push you further from truth. In this state, creativity dries up, intuition is muffled, and authentic love becomes strained. because everything is filtered through fear. But when you release worry, when you let go of the compulsion to control what cannot be controlled, your entire system begins to relax into balance. Your body regains its rhythm, your breath deepens, and clarity returns like sunlight breaking through the fog. From here, flow states emerge naturally. You write, speak, create, or even love with a depth that feels effortless, because it comes from alignment rather than resistance. Worry is like a heavy stone carried in your pocket everywhere you go, weighing you down silently. The moment you set it aside, you feel lighter, freer, and capable of seeing life as it truly is, rather than as your fears imagined it to be. This is the essence of spiritual awakening, a recognition that life was never meant to be forced, but flowed with. Awakening means you see beyond the ego's restless grasping and step into the deeper current of the self, the part of you that has always known how to navigate without struggle. In modern life, where constant striving, endless comparison, and productivity at all costs are celebrated, this teaching becomes even more vital. To stop chasing is to reclaim your energy from illusions, and to start aligning is to participate in the real order of existence. Notice how opportunities often arrive when you finally stop forcing them. How love deepens when you release the need to control another person's feelings. How creativity floods in once you stop demanding perfection. These are not coincidences. They are signs that you have entered alignment with the intelligence of life itself. Jung's realization points us to a truth both ancient and urgent. The more we let go, the more we receive. To live in this way is not weakness, but courage, because it requires faith that there is a greater design unfolding, one that does not need your worry to hold it together. By stepping into this alignment, you allow your awakened self to guide you, and in that trust, you discover clarity, balance, and the authentic power that was waiting for you all along. If this truth resonates with you today, declare it in the comments. When I stop worrying, life flows with ease and alignment. Your words are powerful. Let them shape your reality. And that brings us to the heart of Jung's realization. True transformation begins when we stop chasing and start aligning with who we really are. If this message spoke to you, I invite you to support our work like this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss our upcoming videos filled with insights to guide your own spiritual journey. Until next time, stay aligned, stay awake, and keep walking the path of wisdom. How to never get angry or bothered by anyone. He who angers you conquers you. These words remind us that our peace is the ultimate power. Carl Jung believed that much of what irritates us in others is often a reflection of what we haven't yet accepted within ourselves. In today's video, you'll learn how to reclaim your emotional sovereignty, transform triggers into teachers, and live from a space of spiritual intelligence and inner mastery. Imagine no longer being shaken by someone else's chaos. What would your life feel like then? As you watch, I invite you to reflect. What usually triggers you, and how can you transmute that into wisdom? Leave your thoughts in the comments, because your insight might be the light someone else needs. Let's begin. 1. Your reactions are your choice. Your reaction is your choice, your power, your turning point. You can either hand over your emotional sovereignty to someone else's words and behavior, or you can pause, observe, and reclaim your inner authority. The most powerful people aren't the ones who never get offended. They're the ones who know how to alchemize offense into insight. Every time someone provokes you, the universe is handing you a mirror, not a weapon. Most people swing that mirror like a sword, trying to defend their ego. But the wise ones stare into it and ask, what within me is responding so violently? What wound is asking to be healed? This is where true spiritual awakening begins, not in avoiding conflict, but in responding from consciousness rather than from pain. The ego seeks to react. It wants to prove, defend, and dominate. But the soul seeks to rise. It wants peace, not power. The difference between reaction and response is the difference between unconsciousness and spiritual intelligence. When you respond with awareness, you stop letting other people dictate your emotional weather. Just because someone storms into your day doesn't mean you have to get wet. You are not obligated to absorb the energy that others project. In fact, the most evolved souls are not the ones who control others, but the ones who master their own inner state regardless of what others do. Carl Jung's teachings remind us that what we see in others is often what we have yet to face in ourselves. So when someone disrespects you, gossips about you, ignores you, or even mocks you, it's not about them. It's about whether you will allow that to shape your inner world. In the modern age, we are surrounded by triggers, online, offline, in relationships, in traffic, at work. But every trigger is an invitation, a test of your alignment, not your tolerance. Choosing to respond with presence instead of reacting with pain is the mark of deep inner maturity. This doesn't mean being passive. It means being sovereign. It means you get to decide who enters your peace and what energy you give permission to alter your frequency. Emotional discipline is not suppression. It's spiritual clarity. It's the deep knowing that you no longer dance to the rhythm of someone else's dysfunction. The real flex is being able to walk away without closing your heart. The real power is being able to smile, not because you're weak, but because you've grown. This is not just a mindset, it's a vibration. And the more you choose it, the less the world can shake you. Because the one who cannot be disturbed cannot be controlled. And in that stillness, you meet yourself. Have you ever practiced pausing before reacting to protect your peace? If so, let us know how it's helped you. If not, comment, I will pause before I react to start cultivating emotional mastery with us. 2. Stop expecting others to behave like you. When you stop expecting others to behave like you set yourself free from one of the most draining emotional traps, the illusion of control. Carl Jung once said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. That's not just a quote, it's a mirror. The anger, the offense, the disappointment you feel when someone acts carelessly, lies, betrays, or disrespects you isn't just about what they did. It's about the silent contract you wrote in your mind, believing they would act with your same values, your same level of intelligence, emotional depth, or spiritual wisdom. But they won't, and they're not supposed to. Expecting people to mirror your integrity is like trying to download advanced software into a system that hasn't been updated in years. Not everyone is designed to meet you where you are, and that's not arrogance, it's clarity. People behave based on their own level of consciousness, and when you force them into your mold, you begin to suffer not because of their actions, but because of your expectations. Spiritual awakening requires you to see clearly without needing to control. You must allow others the dignity of their own path, even when it collides with yours. You may have chosen healing, growth, awareness, but they may still be choosing projection, survival, or ego defense. You're not here to fix them. You're here to master your reaction to them. The true test of your evolution isn't how spiritual you sound, but how calm you remain when someone tries to pull you back into the chaos you've already outgrown. Detachment, in this case, is intelligence, not indifference. It is grace choosing itself. There will be people who misunderstand your silence as weakness, your peace as passivity, your distance as arrogance. Let them. Because your soul didn't come here to explain itself to people committed to misreading your energy. The deeper you go into your own healing, the more you realize that your power isn't in how you control others, it's in how you can serve yourself. You learn to walk away, not to prove a point, but to protect your frequency, not to punish them, but to preserve your power. You are not for everyone, and that is your superpower. The more you expect others to have your heart, your honesty, your effort, the more you drain yourself. Some people are not capable of meeting you, not because they're evil, but because they're asleep. Let them sleep. Let them go. Your peace is the highest form of intelligence. You don't need to be angry to be strong. You don't need to be reactive to be respected. The rarest kind of power is the kind that doesn't flinch. You are the calm in the storm, the stillness in the noise, the observer, not the reactor. When you stop expecting others to act like you stop giving them the power to shake your inner world. You begin to live from within, not from their behavior. That's not just maturity, that's sovereignty. Are you ready to stop expecting others to be just like you? If so, comment below, "I choose acceptance," to show your commitment to inner peace and emotional freedom. Let's grow together, one mindful choice at a time. 3. Let go of the need to always be right. The need to always be right is one of the most deceptive traps of the ego. It convinces you that control is strength, that dominance is intelligence, and that being heard is the same as being understood. But true spiritual development begins when you release that craving. You don't need to win every argument to be powerful. In fact, Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." What triggers you is not your enemy, it's your mirror. When someone challenges your belief or questions your viewpoint, your reaction reveals your level of inner peace. If you're quick to defend, to interrupt, to insist that they just don't get it, what you're really saying is that a part of you still needs external validation. That's not a flaw, it's a lesson. One that asks you to stop outsourcing your worth to other people's agreement. Spirituality teaches us that peace is greater than pride. Wisdom knows that silence is louder than noise. The moment you choose not to respond to provocation, not to explain yourself to be seen, not to argue to be right, you transcend the battlefield altogether. When you let go of the need to be right, you begin to access a different frequency of energy, one that is not about proving, but about preserving. You preserve your energy, your attention, your emotional state. You stop hemorrhaging power every time someone disagrees with you. And ironically, The more you detach from needing to convince others, the more magnetic and influential you become. People are drawn to those who don't flinch at disapproval, who don't collapse when misunderstood. That's the kind of presence that comes from true spiritual wisdom. It's not passive, it's powerful. Carl Jung reminded us that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And for many of us, the unconscious desire to always be right is a symptom of deeper emotional wounds, times when we felt dismissed, unseen, silenced. But your healing does not come through loudness. It comes through stillness, through realizing that your worth is not conditional upon being understood. It's anchored in your essence, not your arguments. The more you practice this detachment, the more peace you experience in every area of your life. You stop taking things personally. You stop needing the last word. You begin to notice how many people live in constant mental battles, defending, justifying, correcting, without realizing they're draining themselves. And while others keep fighting to be right, you're choosing to be free. You're choosing peace over performance, awareness over approval. This is not a weakness. This is mastery. This is where spiritual intelligence becomes visible, not in how much you know, but in how little you need to prove. So when tension arises, let your calm lead. Let your energy stay neutral. Let your spirit remain grounded. That's how you protect your power. That's how you rise. If this message helped you release the need to always be right, take a moment to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Let's keep growing in peace and understanding together. 4. Don't let others define your worth. People will try to define you through their own limitations, but their opinions are not your identity. The moment you allow others to determine your worth is the moment you hand over your spiritual authority. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Yet many people never live that truth because they're trapped in the loop of proving, pleasing, and performing. But you were not born to shrink to fit anyone's comfort zone. You were born to expand, to remember, and to protect the sacred energy that you carry. When someone criticizes or dismisses you, it's often their own shadow reacting to your light. That rejection you felt, it wasn't about your worth, it was about their wounds. Spiritual wisdom teaches us that projection is the language of unconscious pain, and your task is not to absorb it, but to witness it without letting it shake your foundation. In a world that constantly tries to monetize attention and manufacture insecurity, choosing to know your worth without external approval is a spiritual awakening in itself. It's not just about confidence, it's about reclaiming the power you gave away. You are not your job title. You are not your follower count. You are not your past mistakes or someone else's opinion of what's possible for you. Your worth is ancient. It existed before anyone had a name for it. And yet, if you keep waiting for the world to mirror it back to you, you'll always feel like something's missing. Stop waiting to be seen by people who were never meant to understand your frequency. The rarest souls are often misread by those who lack the spiritual depth to recognize divine presence in human form. Your energy is sacred, and part of honoring that sacredness is recognizing that not everyone is qualified to evaluate your value. Their misunderstanding is not your responsibility to fix. Their silence is not your cue to doubt. Their approval is not your gateway to begin. As long as you're measuring your identity by someone else's ruler, you'll remain disconnected from the inner compass that already knows the way. This is the deeper intelligence Jung pointed to, the call to individuate, to separate your soul's voice from the collective noise. Your authenticity is not up for debate. Your peace is not up for negotiation. What's truly powerful is not being liked by everyone. It's being fully aligned with who you are, even when that scares people. You didn't come here to be a diluted version of yourself. You came here to walk like you know who you are, to speak like your truth matters, and to hold your spiritual posture even when no one claps. When someone tries to make you feel small, remember, you're not too much. They're just not prepared. You're not hard to love. They're just unfamiliar with depth. And you're not difficult. You're discerning. The more you honor your worth, the more you'll attract situations, opportunities, and relationships that reflect your frequency, not your fear. This is the moment you stop waiting for validation and start living from alignment. You are not who they say you are. You are who you remember yourself to be when the noise fades and the soul speaks. Let that voice be your guide. Let that knowing be your home. Let your worth be non-negotiable. If you're ready to stop letting others define your worth and take back your emotional freedom, comment below. I define my own value. And if this message speaks to you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts. Your voice matters here. 5. Set boundaries to protect your energy. When you begin to set boundaries, you are not pushing people away. You are inviting your highest self to rise. You are finally saying, "My energy is sacred," and that silent declaration changes everything. The moment you stop giving everyone open access to your mind, your time, and your emotions, you start to feel the return of your personal power. People might say you've changed, but what's really happening is that you're no longer available for your own disrespect. You've realized that constantly saying yes to others was a slow and quiet way of saying no to yourself. Carl Jung taught us that the soul becomes troubled not because of outer chaos, but because of inner betrayal when we abandon our truth to keep the peace, to be accepted, to avoid confrontation. But what if the real confrontation is with yourself? What if the war is within every time you smile when you're hurting, agree when you're unsure, or stay silent when your spirit is screaming? The most dangerous form of exhaustion is not physical, it's emotional. It's the slow drain that comes from unspoken boundaries, from relationships built on obligation instead of mutual respect. It's allowing guilt to become your compass and fear to become your script. You don't have to keep proving your goodness by tolerating what drains you. Spiritual wisdom begins the moment you understand that self-respect is the foundation of inner peace. Intelligence isn't just about knowing facts. It's about knowing yourself deeply enough to protect your energy like the rare force it is. When you allow too much access, you become too predictable, too convenient. But the more selective you become, the more magnetic you are. The more you choose intentional silence over forced performance, the more people begin to recognize your presence as something rare, something real. Boundaries are not barriers. They are bridges to a life where your needs matter just as much as your love. They are the invisible lines where your authenticity breathes, where your nervous system relaxes, where your peace returns. And yes, some people will test them. But every time you uphold them, you teach your nervous system safety. You teach your inner child protection. You teach the world how to treat you. This is emotional intelligence in action. It is the unseen spiritual awakening where you are no longer reacting. You are choosing intentionally who gets your presence, your story, your softness. Carl Jung reminds us that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So if your life keeps repeating patterns of burnout, resentment, and overgiving, maybe it's not fate, it's a boundary that hasn't been drawn yet. You weren't born to absorb the chaos of others. You were born to radiate clarity. And clarity comes when you stop negotiating your worth, when you stop explaining your no, when you stop proving your right to be at peace. You don't need to become louder to be heard. You need to become clearer to be respected. Spiritual power is quiet. It is felt, not forced. And the more you protect your energy, the more that power begins to speak for you without saying a word. 6. Detach from the opinions of others. When you begin to truly evolve in your spiritual development, you reach a place where peace no longer comes from how others see you. It comes from how deeply you're rooted in your own being. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And yet so many people abandon themselves daily just to be accepted by others who don't even know how to accept themselves. You weren't created to bend under the weight of other people's opinions. You weren't born to seek approval from those who are still at war with their own reflection. Your soul came here for alignment, not applause. Every time you choose your truth over performance, you heal. Every time you choose presence over reaction, you grow. And every time you choose peace over proving yourself, you ascend into a higher level of emotional intelligence that cannot be disturbed by surface-level noise. This is the essence of real spiritual wisdom, not needing the world to validate who you are, because your self-worth is no longer on trial. You don't have to explain your soul to people who aren't listening. You don't have to prove your energy to people who cannot feel it. Detachment isn't a sign of weakness. It's the signature of those who are emotionally sovereign. You are no longer available to be defined by projections, misunderstood by those who cannot see past their filters, or drained by defending a truth that stands strong in silence. The deeper your spiritual awakening, the less interested you become in convincing anyone of your value. You learn that not reacting is an act of wisdom, not submission. That walking away from what disturbs your spirit is an act of sacred self-protection. That silence can be power, and detachment can be love. You realize that not every opinion deserves a response. Not every person deserves access to your peace, and not every moment requires a reaction. Emotional maturity is knowing the difference. There is no deeper spiritual wisdom than protecting your energy without guilt. In a world obsessed with noise, your calm will threaten those addicted to chaos. In a culture addicted to visibility, your ability to remain unseen but spiritually strong becomes a rare aura that speaks louder than words. And while others are busy fighting for attention, you'll be busy aligning with purpose. While they seek validation, you'll be deepening your truth. The moment you release the need to be liked is the moment you become free. That's when you understand that spirituality is not about performance, it's about presence. It's about being so whole within yourself that even when others try to misunderstand, dismiss, or criticize you, your peace remains untouched. That is your real power. That is your true spiritual development. If you're ready to stop living by other people's opinions and start standing firm in your truth, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss content that helps you reclaim your inner power. Comment below. I release the need for approval. I am free. 7. Respond with silence, not anger. There is a quiet power in not reacting that speaks louder than any outburst. And in this stillness lies the essence of spiritual awakening. When someone attempts to provoke you, disrespects you, or tries to pull you into their chaos, your ability to remain calm is not a sign of weakness, but a reflection of deep spiritual maturity and emotional intelligence. Carl Jung taught that what irritates us in others is often a reflection of something unresolved within ourselves. And that's why silence becomes a sacred mirror. Instead of becoming a prisoner of your emotional triggers, you become the master of your internal state. And this shift changes everything. Anger is fast and shallow. It's the mind's impulsive attempt to defend the ego. But silence, that sacred pause, is deep, transformative, and sovereign. It is in that moment of restraint that your true power emerges, because when you stop reacting, you start choosing. And choice is the foundation of all spiritual freedom. People expect noise, explanation, retaliation, but when you meet aggression with presence, when you offer stillness instead of storm, your aura speaks what words cannot. This isn't about suppressing your emotions or pretending things don't affect you. It's about standing in your truth so powerfully that nothing external can shake your inner alignment. You no longer fight to be seen or understood, because you recognize that not everyone has the spiritual bandwidth to meet you where you are. That's why silence is not avoidance, it's selection. It's the conscious act of protecting your energy from those who cannot yet hold it. And in this energy, your peace becomes magnetic. You stop being reactive and instead become reflective. You don't argue with projections. You don't dance with dysfunction. You don't let temporary emotions make permanent decisions. You observe, you breathe, and you reclaim your power in the space where others lose theirs. Modern life is filled with noise, urgency, and triggers that test your presence every day. Online comments, traffic, family tension, workplace stress. But responding with stillness instead of outrage is not only revolutionary, it's the most elevated form of self-respect. Because every time you respond with silence instead of anger, you are not losing the moment, you are mastering it. You are transmuting emotional chaos into grounded wisdom, and that is the work of the awakened soul. You become the still water in the storm, the unshakable root beneath the surface, the calm eye at the center of your own inner hurricane. And while others may seek validation through loud reactions, you build quiet empires within. This is spirituality in action, not in rituals or robes, but in your ability to hold peace when the world offers you war. The one who chooses silence is not the one who loses the argument, but the one who refuses to lower their frequency to win it. If this message resonates with you, speak it into existence. I choose silence over anger. I protect my peace and respond with wisdom. If you feel the power in this, like the video, Subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a moment of truth and growth. 8. Practice gratitude to dissolve anger. Carl Jung once said that even a happy life cannot be without a measure of darkness, and that truth becomes a guiding force when learning how to never get angry or bothered by anyone. The real alchemy begins not by resisting anger, but by transforming it, and the most underrated but spiritually intelligent way to do that is through the power of gratitude. When you're angry, it often means your mind is locked in a repetitive loop, obsessed with what should have happened, what someone should have said, or how things should have gone. But gratitude shatters that mental trap. It doesn't ignore the pain. It shifts your emotional posture from victimhood to spiritual power. You're not saying everything is perfect. You're saying, even in this moment, there's something sacred I refuse to overlook. That act alone brings spiritual wisdom into the body, quiets the nervous system, and reclaims your energy from the chaos of reaction. Anger feeds off the illusion that we've lost control. Gratitude reminds us that we still have power. The moment you choose to focus on what's still working, what you still love, what hasn't been taken from you, you interrupt the ego's urge to retaliate or defend. It's not weakness, it's emotional intelligence in motion. When someone disrespects you, you don't need to spiral into rage to prove your worth. You pause, ground yourself in what truly matters, and remember, my peace is not up for sale. That choice doesn't make you passive. It makes you spiritually untouchable. Carl Jung called this the individuation process, the sacred journey of unifying all fragmented parts of the self. And anger is just one of those fragments, crying out to be integrated, not indulged. In relationships, gratitude becomes a mirror that reflects growth instead of grudges. You start seeing the argument not as betrayal, but as a teacher. You begin noticing that every disappointment was preparing you for discernment. Every rejection was redirecting you to alignment. And every wound was waking you up to your own neglected power. This is spirituality in its rawest form, not floating above conflict, but learning how to rise through it without losing your center. Every thank you whisper in moments of frustration is a psychological reset, a declaration that you're more committed to your peace than to being right. That's not just maturity, it's magnetic prosperity. Science now backs what mystics have always known. Gratitude changes the brain. It rewires your focus, redirects your emotional patterns, and sharpens your spiritual vision. The more you practice it, the more emotionally resilient you become, not because life gets easier, but because your inner world gets stronger. You stop being so reactive to noise, comments, or behaviors that once triggered you, because you're living from a higher awareness that knows every external drama is an invitation to return inward. And when you live like that, anchored, awake, and unbothered, you don't just manage anger. You dissolve it. You turn what once consumed you into clarity. You become the kind of person who doesn't just seek peace, but embodies it, because you've made gratitude your default setting and your quiet rebellion. If you've made it this far, you're someone who chooses peace over anger. Drop a comment saying, "Gratitude is my power," to affirm your shift toward calm and clarity. Stay with us. Your journey to inner peace is only just beginning. 9. Reframe criticism as growth. When someone criticizes you, they're not just attacking your character. They're handing you a map to the parts of yourself that still need healing. Instead of recoiling in defense, pause and ask yourself what part of you is reacting. Carl Jung reminds us, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. And within that idea lies the key to emotional freedom. Most people mistake criticism as rejection, but those on a path of spiritual development see it as revelation. When you no longer see critique as a threat, but as a mirror, your whole inner world changes. You stop giving away your power to the opinions of others, and instead use every uncomfortable moment as a tool for deepening your spiritual intelligence. You realize that not everything said to you is true, but everything that affects you emotionally is pointing to something within you that still seeks resolution. That's where the growth is. That's where real transformation begins. You can either protect your ego or evolve your soul, but you can't do both at the same time. When you choose spiritual growth, you commit to self-inquiry over self-defense. You ask questions like, why does this comment hurt me? What belief is it pressing against? What truth have I avoided facing? And in doing so, you strip away the illusions of identity that were built just to feel safe. Criticism then becomes sacred. It's no longer a wound, but a window. Every harsh word, every dismissive tone, every passive-aggressive jab becomes an opportunity to observe your emotional reflexes, not obey them. You begin to master your energy instead of leaking it through reaction. This is the difference between unconscious resistance and conscious refinement. One keeps you in loops, the other moves you forward. Not all criticism is valid, but all criticism is valuable when you are spiritually awake. You learn to discern. You sift through the projections, absorb the wisdom, and let go of what isn't yours without bitterness. You become calm, not because life is easy, but because your self-awareness is deep. You are no longer ruled by the need to be liked, the urge to retaliate, or the compulsion to explain yourself. You realize that inner peace isn't found by silencing others. It's found by silencing your attachment to being understood. And in that silence, power returns. You rise above the noise with grace. You move differently, not to avoid pain, but to alchemize it. That is the essence of spiritual wisdom. That is how you stop being bothered by anyone and start becoming a master of your own presence. This is not avoidance. It's the embodiment. You embody the truth that people's opinions are reflections of their own filters, not your reality. You hold space for your growth while releasing the need to convince. You realize that someone else's misunderstanding of you does not make you less whole. It only shows where they have yet to understand themselves. And with that understanding, you begin to treat criticism as data, not drama. You stop giving it authority and start using it as fuel. Your response is no longer about them. It's about you reclaiming every part of yourself that used to get shaken. This is spirituality in action. This is how your spiritual development turns wounds into wisdom, reaction into reflection, and discomfort into clarity. And once you learn to do that, you become emotionally untouchable, not because nothing is said about you, but because nothing said about you holds power over your peace. Don't forget to subscribe for more powerful insights on transforming criticism into a tool for growth. What once felt like rejection can become redirection if you're open to the lesson. Stick around. Your breakthrough starts with a shift in perspective. 10. Master the art of letting go. There is a quiet kind of intelligence that doesn't need to prove itself. It simply observes, lets go, and moves forward with grace. You don't need to win every argument or explain yourself to be at peace. Real spiritual wisdom lies in mastering the emotional space between what happens and how you choose to respond. Carl Jung once said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." And that choice begins the moment you stop giving people power over your nervous system. Emotional mastery isn't about suppressing feelings. It's about recognizing that not everything deserves your reaction. The more spiritually awakened you become, the more you understand that anger is often an invitation to engage in battles that drain your energy and disconnect you from your higher self. You don't have to accept every invitation to chaos. Some people come to trigger you, not to teach you, and your silence is the boundary they didn't expect. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting or pretending it didn't hurt. It means you've grown enough to honor what happened without being held hostage by it. Intelligence is knowing when to stay silent, when to walk away, and when to preserve your inner peace like sacred ground. You begin to feel it in your body when something no longer deserves a response. Your breathing slows, your heart softens, your spirit rises. That's the turning point. You realize that healing doesn't come from closure. It comes from self-respect. Jung reminded us that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. So instead of chasing validation, you begin to ask, what is this reaction revealing about me? And from that space of self-awareness, you stop needing revenge, resolution, or recognition. You find power in restraint, not reaction. Letting go becomes your declaration of freedom. You no longer wait for the apology. You become at peace. You no longer try to change what cannot be controlled. You simply let it pass through you, like the wind, and you remain centered in your own stillness. You don't explain your silence. You wear it like armor. And in this stillness, you begin to magnetize everything that aligns with your intelligence and spiritual wisdom. You walk away, not because you're weak, but because you've outgrown the drama. You stop proving your worth because you've embodied it. You stop shrinking yourself to be understood because you've chosen to be whole. This is what it means to master the art of letting go, not to run away, but to rise above with power, precision, and peace. To affirm your commitment to inner peace, declare your release. Comment below, "I choose to let go," to mark your moment of freedom and inspire others to free themselves from what no longer serves them. And remember, your peace is a sacred power that no one can take unless you hand it over. As Carl Jung once said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Let this be the moment you choose inner mastery over external reaction. If this message resonated with you, don't forget to like this video. Share it with someone who needs this spiritual reminder, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. Tap the notification bell so you never miss our upcoming content on emotional intelligence, spiritual awakening, and Carl Jung's timeless insights. Until next time, stay calm, stay aware, and stay wise.